Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
What is AEW missing? I am Luke Owen, DAD. That is Chopper P. Quinnell. That is your Jam That Champion and Quizzlemania champion, Tempest. We are the Blackpool Content Club, and this is the WrestleTalk Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, please do press that subscribe button and press that little thumbs up button as well, because it really helps us out in the little old algorithm. And we are going to kick things off. Are you okay now, Pete?
Yep. Just sorting out my seat height.
Just sorting out your chair height?
I need to be up a little bit because I'm very small, you see. So I need to pump myself up as much as I can.
I've never noticed.
No, it's never been a thing. Not even at any times when I've had to stand on things for photos or anything. It's never been pointed out that I am in fact short.
Yeah,
I love all the comments on that first live reactions I did with both of y'all, where people were just like, I didn't realize Tempest is so small. It's like, no, I'm just sat on the seat that doesn't go up.
He's also just further away. It's a curved table.
Yeah.
Those cows are small. These cows are far away. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I'm quite happy to sit here and talk about Pete's height, Tempest's chair problems, because he is sat on the uncomfortable steel folding chair.
Yeah.
You know, and we could talk about AEW. Really, I just want to talk about Marvel Snap, because
I saw this tweet.
Yeah, oh god, you guys, I got hooked on it by accident.
Yeah. I've seen several people just be like, oh no. Well, I'm down a rabbit hole.
Keith Stewart, who I really respect, he did like a review of it, and he was like, guys, this game is amazing. And I'm like, well, I really respect the thoughts of Mr. Stewart. So, and then I don't really do a lot of mobile gaming. So I begrudgingly downloaded it, and I was like, well, I'll see what the fuss is all about here. And I did it for two reasons. Number one, I'll see what the fuss is about, and then I'll realize it's rubbish, and I'll see it with my arms folded. B, I needed some content for another podcast that I did, because I haven't played it. In that podcast, I had to talk about games that I've played, and I haven't played any games. So I was like, well, I'll download Marvel Snap. And I didn't download it, and I didn't play it in time. But anyway, last night, my wife and mother-in-law were watching Escape to the Chateau. And I'm like, right, well, this is now my time to give this Marvel Snap thing a go. And I haven't stopped playing it since. I played like 3 games last night, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually quite good. That's actually pretty good." And then this morning I was on the tube, and I was like, "Let's just play a couple more. Let's play a couple more games."
Got nothing else to do on the tube.
Exactly. So I played like 10 games now, and I've lost 1, and I'm like, I want to keep playing it.
Yeah. Is that what AEW is missing?
It's missing Marvel Snap.
It's missing, yeah. If they just released AEW Snap, then like we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. It's a great game, everyone. And when
Not
I say
sponsored,
I want to say
way.
great game. It's okay.
Yeah, perfectly fine.
But it's a perfectly fine little card game.
Yeah.
I'd quite like a physical version of it. But we are here to talk about All Elite Wrestling, because we are the channel of podcast shills for AEW.
That's right.
But the majority of the videos that we have done as of late have been a bit more on the negative side of AEW. And I think actually, we've talked about on previous content clubs how you can look at the Ring of Honor purchase episode of Dynamite as sort of like the genesis of
McGillicuddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As the sort of like the starting moment, the pivotal point where things have started to be a little bit, not the great AEW highs we had of 2021, or even, some of 2020, like that amazing 18-month run that they went on. It was just like, this is the best weekly product that there has ever been. And I feel like, we have been missing something. And Ollie's review that he did of Dynamite this week, because I thought this week's Dynamite was actually pretty good. Like, I had a pretty good time with it. I thought the trios match was a lot of fun. I thought the main events did have some positives. I thought everyone's promos were real good. The in-ring action was very good. And I'm still excited for Full Gear. And
I'm more excited now with the matches they've announced.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that triple threat's going to be rad. I think that the trios match is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to see the Elite back. But Ollie made this point in his review. I don't know if he's going to make it in the podcast review. I'll imagine he will do. We haven't recorded the podcast review yet. Where it feels like AEW has just been waiting for Full Gear to be done. Like the after what happened at Brawl Out until now has just been treading water until we can get that done. And then, cool, I've now got the Elite back, and I can start doing some of the storylines that I didn't get to do after All Out because my plans had to change.
Yeah.
And it just, it really does feel like it's just a lot of people are just waiting for Full Gear to be over, and then that's our new jumping off point. I think that coupled with we're still waiting on this Ring of Honor TV deal, And I feel like those two things combined have just meant that AEW feels like it's been missing something recently. I mean, Pete, what do you think?
I completely agree. I think, for a long time, I think people have thought that the vibe of AEW is off, and people couldn't really put their finger on why that is. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel the same as it used to. And I think at this point in time, it is that. It is Tony Khan has had his plans forcibly changed, not through necessarily much fault of his own. A lot of stuff outside of his control that has forced all of his plans that he had to change. And that, that is hard to deal with. To have to adapt like that on the fly is a difficult thing to do. And more often than not, people like us or fans, whatever, just be like, well, just do this. That's the solution. And very rarely is it that simple to just like, here's the new thing you should do. But I do think that this feels like, okay, we have another pay-per-view. And then after that, I can go back to what I wanted to do before. Instead of, this is something that me and you've spoken about on various SmackDown podcasts and stuff, of being, sometimes you can get into a hole of being too committed to one idea. Being like, this is what I want to do. So we're going to, doesn't matter whatever else happens, we're going to get back to this thing that I wanted to do. Sorry, just hit the microphone. And even though we're continuing on the weekly TV and we're continuing to spin these wheels and stuff, we still want to get back to that point. Tony Khan in particular wants to get back to that point that he wanted to be after All Out. And it feels like this is almost like a bit more of a, not worthless TV, because there is still worth to the TV, but it feels like it's a bit superfluous, a bit superficial to just be like, yeah, we'll just keep the weekly TV going until we can get back to this point again where I want to be, instead of going like, okay, let's take this and we'll go in a new direction. He's just gone, we're going to go in the same direction with a detour to get there first.
Yeah.
And that's the vibe that it feels like to me anyway on weekly shows.
How about you?
I think it's a bit of a mix of everything that's been said so far, but in general, we were saying this in the office, if I had to use a word to describe the current product, it would be uninspired. Because I look at this, and there are still things going on TV that I think are quite good. I think that the Moxley MJF stuff has had a lot of very good moments. I think that MJF's character arc in general has been very good. I think that there have been plenty of good matches throughout this period from All Out until now. I think that Saraya coming back maybe not has hit the nail on the head every single time, but it's at least interesting TV when it does happen. And there's a bunch of other things, like the Acclaimed are very popular, but at the same time, none of the things that I've just listed, with maybe the exception a little bit here and there of the MJF stuff, really feels like the same way that AEW's booking was just so tight. It was so tightly woven into the show, like it was with the Hangman Page character arc and the team with Kenny Omega and then the FTR match and then the Young Bucks stuff and the whole arc that the Elite went on for like a year and a half there. That, to me, was my favorite part of All Elite Wrestling. Yes, I love seeing the great matches, but honestly, we live in an era now where you can see great matches wherever you want to look for them. If you want to see a great match, you can go on New Japan World or Stardom, or you can watch Indies, you can watch whatever you want. You'll see a 4.5-star match. Impact, watch a Mike Bailey match, please. There are great matches everywhere. So yes, that does greatly help my enjoyment of the weekly TV, but I need the threads that are tying all of these things together, and I don't feel like we've had as many of those threads this year, and there are still week-to-week storytelling moments and that sort of thing, but it's not the same feeling that I had watching this show when it was the Elite story, or when it was Punk and MJF, or whatever the case may be. There have been a number of very good storylines that they've told. Slow, a building story like Wardlow's turn on MJF. I think that was still handled very well until it wasn't. But that's not, again, their fault. I just think we're missing some of that. It feels like, okay, we're just going to book another promo segment. We're just going to book another one of these. It doesn't feel like there's a really creative idea for the individual storylines here. It's just kind of, Tony Storm will have a match. Jamie Hayter will have a match. Maybe they'll do a backstage promo. There's not that much to it a lot of the time, and I don't feel as connected to the stories as I had been. And it's disappointing.
It's superficial.
Yeah, superficial. Yes, it is a good word to kind of describe things, and I think it's my kind of big feeling on this is that Tony clearly loved Punk. Because he was building his entire promotion around Punk. Like that was since he came in last September through to Brawl Out. He was building his promotion around him to the point when, even when he was out injured, it was like okay, well, we've put the belt on Moxley, but you are just holding onto this title until Punk comes back, and then I'm putting the title back onto Punk, and then I'm going to do an MJF thing. Like he was there to keep the title warm effectively.
He did a great job with that.
He did a great job with it.
Did a better job than we all thought would be possible.
I think it's in spite of what he was handled. I think he wasn't given like a big world title program that he could then go off and feud with things. He was just on TV having good matches and just making the title stay relevant until Punk came back, and then Punk gets the belt. Like I know Moxley squashed him, but it was just the next week Ace Steel came out and was like, Punk, you should fight for the belt. And Punk was like, yeah, cool, I'll do that then. And it wasn't like the great follow-up that I thought they were going to do to the big squash match. And similarly to that, the Elite. He clearly loves the Bucks. He loves Omega. He had said, I'm not doing the Trios Championships until Kenny is back. And then Kenny came back and he was like, cool, well, I'm going to put the Trios titles on these three guys because that's what I wanted to do with the Trios titles. And the great example and sort of proof to my point, I guess, is that what have Death Triangle done with the belts?
They've had good matches.
They've had not even that many. They've had, 3 title defense? I think this was their 3rd title defense that they've done. Sure, they've all been great, but they haven't had the big story that they've done. They've had like Packers used the hammer on the best friends, to retain the titles. But, that didn't play into the match that they had this week with Top Flight and AR Fox. Like they haven't had this thing to kind of like hook you in as an audience to make you think like, that's why these guys are the Trios champions. They have just been a team holding the belts warm until Kenny came back and the Bucks came back, and they'll just win them this weekend at Full Gear. I mean, that's kind of like my feeling is they're just going to win the belts back. Because if they don't, then I don't know where you're going to go with the Elite after this. But then I kind of look at the landscape of things. I'm like, well, I don't know who they're going to feud with either, apart from perhaps maybe House of Black because they've got plans for them to come back. So I feel like AEW, I've said this on a few AEW podcasts as well, I think the thing that they're really missing at the moment is that hook. That thing that makes you want to tune in the following week to see what's going on.
It's funny you mentioned hook, because that for me is another one of the issues with AEW, is during that time when we loved the program from week to week to week, it wasn't just that the Elite storyline is great, or you have a Punk MJF feud, or you have whatever that's really good at the top of the card. It was throughout the rest of the card as well. Even if it wasn't like the same caliber of story, it was like, okay, we're building this guy for the future. This guy's going to be a star, and we're going to have fun stuff peppered throughout. We have a hook. We have the rise of, occasionally we'll get like, there's hints of like, we're building up Dante Martin for the future. That's cool.
Ricky Starks.
We're building up Ricky Starks for the future. We're building up Jungle Boy for the future. All these things, even though they're not in prominent stories right now, they're all being built up for the future. This is the future of the company is all here, and it's enjoyable, and you should get invested in these wrestlers because in a few years they're going to be at the top of it. And then since then, a lot of them have kind of gone off the boil a little bit. And even in like the big coming out stuff, it's like, okay, Ricky Starks is no longer done with Team Taz. Then he's off TV for a while, and occasionally he'll wrestle and have like a win. And he's like, now he's in the AEW Championship Eliminator Tournament. It's like, okay, I thought we were doing more of like a progressive thing. And then when he has this big, okay, he's not in Team Taz anymore. He lost to Powerhouse Hobbs. It's like, that's good because we want to build up Hobbs as well. But like, it just feels like a lot of the groundwork they were doing to get you invested in the rest of the show, aside from the great stories, is now just being like, yeah, but we'll come back to that later.
We'll come back to that later. Feels like a real problem that AEW always has. It's why we never got Lucha Brothers and Proud and Powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the prime example. But it always feels like we were going in a certain direction. And whether it be the ground stories with the Elite or Punk and MJF or whatever, there's always a direction that you know that the company is going in. And sometimes they'll occasionally zag when you expect them to zig, and you're like, oh, that's unexpected. I didn't see that coming. That's great. But even if it's more subtle directions, and you say like, yeah, we've got the 4 pillars. We've got Jungle Boy, Dante Martin, all these guys that we're building up for the future. And then they just kind of veer away from that direction. You go, oh, I thought that's what, were we not doing that? Hook. is, I think, another great example. It's like, this guy's a big deal. You should really care about him. Then he won the FTW championship, and you're like, now what?
I go back
now he's going to defend the belt against Daddy Magic. It's like, what?
I go
Why?
back to when Hook debuted. You guys were doing the Rampage SmackDown review, and you just had that thumbnail with Hook on it, and it just says Hook. And you just like, Hook's debut was amazing. It's one of the most watched SmackDown Rampage review videos that we've had on the WrestleTalk podcast.
Yeah.
Because it was like a hot thing at the time.
It's a huge deal.
And like Hook was like the hottest thing in that company world, to the point where you even talked about like put the world title on him.
Yeah.
Like, because you could do you won't get another chance to have a guy like this again who's got this hot this quick.
Yep.
But like since then he's gone off the boil. And I think like
Completely.
Wardlow has massively gone off the boil.
Yeah.
In the last
They have a
few
direction,
months.
and then they just go,
Yeah.
never mind. Again, we'll come back to that. Remember this Wardlow build-up thing? We'll come back to it later. We'll have him do some stuff with Jay Lethal or whatever, and we'll come back to him later. It's like, well, no, you have to maintain that. You can't just like be like, we've done the groundwork, and we'll revisit that in 3 years. Because you have to maintain that level of progression. You know?
And it also feels like because Tony then gets an idea in his head, he's like, "Oh yeah, the firm that's my new project." And so like, you know, we did our predictions video for Full Gear, and like at no point did we really think like, "Oh yeah, no, it'll probably be like." I think I even joked. I mean, it would be Ethan Page because Tony loves the firm, but we were like, "No, but there's so much more better options for us to go with." Like Bandito is way hotter at the moment than Ethan Page is with the rest of the firm. But those are the guys that are getting the push at the moment. Like the Ass Boys are getting more TV time than FTR at the moment.
Make him angry. Anytime you mention the Ass Boys.
So I've got a few thoughts on all of this, going off of what this discussion has been, because I completely agree with the thought that they have not done a great job of capitalizing on somebody who is red hot. I think Hook is the perfect example of that, where I understand that he is still green. I understand that he is still a rookie and everything, and you maybe don't want to put the world title on him. Maybe that's too big of an idea. But he is so good to the point that you have to capitalize on an organic reaction like that. And they didn't do that. Like, they put him into a program with Danhausen, and I'm not saying that couldn't have worked and everything, but like, I looked at Pete like a week or two ago and just went, whatever happened to Hookhausen? It just like, it was at least something, and then
Hook was very entertaining.
Hook won the FTW title and just dropped off the face of the earth. And he just kind of pops in every once in a while, has a match, and now he's just kind of another guy on the show. And I take this all back to how I was really feeling about the show last year. Like that really great run they had from like the return of fans up until about Full Gear, where I was looking at it. And this is where I was really starting to galaxy brain like how AEW was being booked, in the sense that you have X amount of stars mixed with X amount of other stars to make your programs, and you got to kind of rotate all those ones through with the TV time that you have. And some of them are going to be matches, some of them are going to be promos, some of them are going to be backstage bits. But all the time, the next thing that comes up was something that still held my attention. And it didn't have to be the real big things, but you had the Elite storyline on top, and then you go down another level and you had whatever CM Punk was doing, which then became his feud with Eddie Kingston, which was great. But you keep going down the ladder there, and you still had, at that point, Christian Cage and Jurassic Express and their build and then feud with the Elite. So you mix that in, and that's interesting. But you go down another level, and then you had like Dante Martin being paired with Team Taz. And I really started to feel, this is even before all that, like all before the Ring of Honor stuff and Cody leaving and all of the things that people really look at as like, oh, that was the catalyst for this downturn. I just remember them building up Dante Martin for this program or whatever it was going to be with Leo Rush. And then Team Taz took him away from Leo Rush. And then like a week later, he turned on Team Taz anyway. And I was like, okay, this is going to build to Dante Martin being this big star. And then nothing happened. And I understand that Darius Martin coming back and then getting hurt again probably put a bit of a, dumped a pot of cold water on that. But at the same time, you were building up Dante Martin as a single star anyway. You could have done something with him there. And considering after that, we got whatever we got with the TNT title earlier this year, I don't know why they couldn't have just given Dante a run and had him be elevated by all of that. Whereas, again, he was another guy who was starting to get over. He had that really great 6-man tag match with him and the Seidel brothers against the Elite, and then everyone was like, yo, Dante Martin, he's a guy. You got to be watching him on TV every single week. I just feel like so much of the time, the things that we're watching now don't have as much of a purpose as they once did. Because I had a lot of faith for a long time that everything that we were seeing was building to something. Everything was being done for a reason. And I don't feel that way anymore watching the product. Because you will spend the entire summer just watching Jay Lethal wrestle dudes. And no one comes out of it having benefited. And I don't know if it's just having to do with like the formation or the shape of the roster as it is right now, or who they're putting as much focus onto as they were like a year ago or whatnot. But man, I don't know what it is. I think there's a bunch of factors to it. I think a lot of it is just like there's a lot of shine that's now missing off of a lot of guys people were excited to see. I don't think people are excited to, like, people aren't going to be invested and excited to see Andrade on TV anymore. They might not be excited, and hopefully this will change, but they might not be as excited to see Malachi Black on TV as they were a year ago. And it just felt like, okay, now we've loaded up this roster, and then even at the bottom of that card, you've got Lio Rush working with Dante Martin, and that if that's the bottom of your card, that's amazing. That's an amazing bottom half of your roster. And now all of a sudden, it's like, now the bottom half of that roster is filled with the Ass Boys and Jay Lethal, and it's like they can have good matches, but I'm not invested anywhere close to where I was a year ago. And it's just so much that I think was better a year ago, some of which is on them, some of which is just, happenstance. But it's a really tough thing to really narrow down to. Well, they're missing one thing. I think they're missing a lot. And it's a cold product now, as opposed to being a hot product that everyone was excited for last year. And I don't think that can be understated.
A point that you brought up there, I think they have the goodwill that the fans had towards AEW has been chipped away through various bits and pieces. And it's like, oh, you've not done that thing that you wanted. Oh, you're going to continue to do this Sammy Guevara storyline, and you're going to continue to push him as a face, despite everyone not wanting him to be a face anymore. Oh, you're going to do the Ty Mello partnership. We don't like that either. No, you're still going to do it. Okay, that's fine. Oh,
at least they did turn him the heel.
They did then turn him heel, and then continued to push him and did awful stuff that no one wanted to see. But not the point.
TNT title program.
That's
one of the things from like early this year where it was like, oh, this is bad.
This is bad.
TNT.
Yeah.
I don't know what the opposite of muy bueno is, but it was that.
Muy mal. That's Spanish.
Very sad.
The shining example to me of that is Daniel Garcia.
Yeah,
For God's sake.
Oh, man. Tell me about it.
They built up Garcia for ages and wanted you to buy into he's a wrestler. He's in the sports entertainment faction, but he will turn on. This is what we're building to. Except we're not going to do that anymore. And it's like, oh, so this purpose that you've been building to for ages that I'm invested in, you're now not doing for reasons.
He was the main event of Dynamite. Him and Wheeler Yuta for the Pure Championship was the main event of Dynamite.
Yeah.
And they gave it time. They gave it the big presentation when he won. And it's meant pretty much nothing.
Absolutely
because
nothing.
A few weeks later, there was like, reset, put him back in the JAS.
And nothing's changed.
And it's Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter split from Britt Baker at the pay-per-view. And it was like 2 weeks later, now she's back with her again.
And that's the thing. They can do something that we were not expecting if it's better than that.
Yes, absolutely.
If it's better than the thing you were seemingly building to, and they swerve us and subvert our expectations, that's great. It feels like the last 6 months of TV with the Blackpool Combat Club and the Jericho Appreciation Society have not mattered.
No,
because Daniel Garcia...
Forward.
And I think the Blackpool Combat Club, honestly, for as good as a lot of the stuff that they have done with it has been, I'm a little bit disappointed by it.
I'm majorly disappointed
because,
by it.
when they started, I made a point saying, like, by the end of their run, that's going to be my favorite faction of all time. That's my prediction.
It's got all the guys in it.
Oh,
It did. They have every reason to be my favorite faction. And I thought they were really going to go. And again, this might have just been my expectation. But after those first promos from Danielson, I really thought they were going to go and like do a real recruitment and like No, in the first 2 months, we'll go and we'll grab Wheeler Yuta and we'll grab Lee Moriarty and we'll grab Daniel Garcia. And then here's this buildup of this faction and you see the development of each of these guys. And it just stopped at Wheeler Yuta.
Yeah.
And I thought that this was all going to pay off with Garcia joining. And then maybe we move on to the next one and you still have all of the development going on there. But it, again, feels like a waste of time.
Garcia and Yuta then go into the tag division as these two guys that are in the same dojo but don't quite see eye to eye on things.
Yeah.
You tell the story there. Sorry, but I know you wanted to make your point, but I wanted to say, I mentioned the Hook episode that you guys did of the Rampage and SmackDown.
The Wheeler Yuta one.
Do you know what was one of the second most, the biggest ones we've ever done? Was the Wheeler Yuta episode with him and Moxley.
Yeah.
And that was, because I think you just put A Star Is Made.
Yeah.
And it was a massively watched video that we did. And I look to those as trends to be okay, these are the things that fans are really invested in at the moment. And a good, talk about things being off the boil. Saraya came in, that video was a massively watched video. We did a few weeks later where Saraya has announced that she's cleared to wrestle. Not a blip on what the first video did. You know what I mean? It's just you can see audiences through, and perhaps I am putting way more onto YouTube viewership trends than perhaps is, that is perhaps fair. But it's certainly data that I can go on, and I can see data in things that people are interested in, and then that interest petering out.
Yes. Exactly.
Sorry, you were going to make a point. I talked over it.
It's totally fine. For that point that you were saying about the recruitment of Blackpool Combat Club, because for me, that was this is the next big story. Post Elite, Hangman, whatever.
Yes.
The Combat Club is the next big, long storyline we're going to do. And it will be, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to recruit Wheeler Yuta. Awesome. You did that, and you did a fantastic job. You built a guy up. Amazing. Then we're going to go for Daniel Garcia. And it's right, that storyline's playing out now. Great. They're building up. Garcia's going to leave Jericho Appreciation Society. That's great. Amazing. And then they didn't do that. And I was like, oh, this isn't the direction we're going. And I still liked a lot of the presentation of the Combat Club for quite a while, probably longer than most. I still liked I still really like their presentation.
Yeah, I was still flying that flag for a while.
Yeah, and I was like,
it's still good.
Yeah, exactly. We're called the Blackpool Content Club, for God's sake. Please be good. Yeah, and then it was just okay, there's still a lot of meat to this faction yet, because you see the pairings, but there's also other bits that don't quite see eye to eye yet. When you have Danielson brought in Claudio, but then there was the beef between Claudio and Kingston, and then there was all these other factors that went in around it, and I'm there's so much meat to dive into it. I can't wait to see how this is all going to play out, and none of it happened. And then it's just completely gone off the boil. I've been mentioning to Tempest for ages, we barely see them together anymore. It is just they're dudes with a logo. That's it.
And it's barely that. I rationalized with myself, because I was that guy as well that was still flying the flag for the Combat Club, being no, it's still good. It's still really cool. It's still Claudio. It's still Danielson. It's still Moxley and Yuta and stuff. And I was no, but they're not a faction. It's a dojo, and it's they don't always have to be in tag teams or as coming out as a faction to the other.
Chaos or something.
Yeah,
but it hasn't really felt like that either.
No,
it doesn't feel like they're guys that are training together. There was one point that I really liked, and this is the sort of thing I think you can capitalize on they never did, and it was the Blackpool Combat Club versus Best Friends, and Wheeler Yuta pinned Chucky with the seatbelts, and it's Orange Cassidy just goes Chucky taught him that move. And I was oh, that's the sort of thing that we should be looking at. And then you've had moments when the Combat Club members have used other guys' moves, and it's oh, they're all learning from each other. I think someone else then used the seatbelt move because he learned it from Wheeler Yuta, who'd learned it from Chucky. And it's that's what this should be, but it doesn't feel like that either.
No.
And it comes off the back of they've just been feuding with JAS forever.
Oh my God, so long.
And they did nothing with the end to the War Games match that they did with Kingston and Claudio, that I'm how did you not follow up on this? And then what's happened with Kingston? Again,
absolutely nothing.
The hottest guy in that company took him right off the boil.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's getting his dream match on Rampage. I think he cut an amazing promo on this week's Dynamite. I'm glad he's getting that. But this is not what you should have been doing with Eddie Kingston, following on from the Punk feud into the Jericho feud into nothing.
Into nothing.
Into absolute nothing. Eliminated first by Ethan Page. who's eliminated Kingston, who we all love, and he's then eliminated Bandito, who we're all really getting into. He puts no heel heat onto Ethan Page, just makes it go like, oh, why him? Like, why are we pushing this guy? And I've got nothing against Ethan Page.
Because I like Ethan
Page is great. Ethan Page is awesome.
Yeah.
But he's stuck with the firm.
Yeah.
They're like this bunch of fucking idiots that are just like these losers. And it's like, but they're being presented this main event group. And it's not working. No. And it's just, every time we're talking about this, and you mentioned a guy, I'd forgotten about like Dante Martin. Like Wardlow's another one. And then these guys that at one point were like getting mega reactions. The only team, to give AEW some credit, so we're not just completely, being negative Nancy's here, the only one I can give credit, the Acclaimed. The Acclaimed is a group that got massively hot, and TK was like, well, I'm going with those guys.
Yeah.
Granted, FTR were also massively hot at the time. But he was like, no, there's something to do with the Acclaimed here. And I can see that being a great match at All Out, and then be an even bigger match when we get to Grand Slam in their home turf, and that's where they win the tag belts. Like, that is wonderful foresight there from Tony Khan. But that's the only example I can really give them. Unless Hayter wins the belt this weekend. Which I really think she should do, because me and Tempest do the best on the prediction show. Tony Storm is getting booed out of that building, because that pay-per-view crowd will be solely behind Jamie Hayter. I also think it's going to happen with the Britt Baker match. I think the crowd are going to be massively behind Baker and very anti-Saraya. And that is actually all down to the booking that they've done for that feud.
100%. Yeah. They've really positioned Saraya as like this outside invading force, and Britt Baker's the heart and soul of AEW.
Baker did this promo on Dynamo. She's like, she's the outside invading force, and they're saying that people in AEW aren't stars, and she is. And I'm like, what is this feud?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
Who's the heel?
Who is the... Because it was Britt Baker, but I feel like it is now Saraya. I think she is the baddie here.
Yeah. Oh, it's really frustrating. Funnily enough, I'd forgotten about Eddie Kingston. For God's sake,
he's
guys.
Another one. Absolutely.
Do you remember after that Jericho feud, after the match particularly at Revolution, people were like, cool, Eddie Kingston should challenge for the AEW World title.
Oh, yeah.
He should win the title at Grand Slam.
Yep. Yeah, why isn't
My
he in
God,
the
how
tournament?
far removed we are from that.
Absolutely,
Jesus.
we are. And like, and I'm not even saying that you have to do lots of long-term stories.
You don't have to.
And the best example I can give of this, my feud of the year last year was Punk and Kingston.
Yeah.
That was a 2-week feud. They had a stare down on Rampage when Kingston interrupted Punk's promo time. They had a segment the following week, and then they had a pay-per-view match. That's it. That's all they did. And I was like, feud of the year. It was my favorite feud of last year.
So good.
I absolutely loved it. And they had then an 8-minute match at Full Gear. I was like, match of the year.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was legit. I was like, that's my match of the year. Because it was, and I watched back the clips when Kingston just drops that back fist on him right at the start, and Punk goes down like a sack of potatoes, and Kingston laughs his head off. It's so great. Yeah. And then I'm watching AEW at the moment, and I'm watching Kingston on TV, and my note last week was like, why isn't he on TV more?
Yeah.
Why isn't this guy on TV more? What has happened to the Kingston thing? And I wonder if it's Santana leaving. And Tony Khan had his direction that he wanted to go in. Santana left, and he's like, well, now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because the Elite went, and he's like, well, now I don't know what to do, so I just put the belts on Death Triangle, but I don't really... Oh, the Elite come back, cool, we'll just put the belts back on that. Oh, got this thing with Punk. Oh, Punk's gone. Oh, I don't really know what to do. I feel that's what that's what happens with him. He can't rebook on the fly. Like,
he's not very good at adapting.
He's not good at... I don't think he is good at adapting. For everything you can say about Vince McMahon, he could adapt when things went bad for him. And it went bad for him all the time. And often
Mainly because of his own booking.
Mainly because of his own booking. And often he would just book worse things. But at least he adapted. At least he tried something.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know what to do. She's a living doll now, and she winks at people, and it makes Doudrop lose matches. Oh. It's bad, but at least it's something.
Oh,
at least I've tried to do something.
I'd rather nothing. In that example, I'd rather nothing. But there's times where it's like, Heist of the Century or whatever, where you book yourself into a corner and go, actually, we're going to have this way out that no one's seen coming, and it's going to be great. And I think, like we said, I think TK is a bit too fixated on his ideas that he has in mind. And he's like, this other stuff has come up, which should dethrone my plans, but I'm not going to let it. We're just going to let that go away so we can focus on what I want to do. I want to make the firm happen. And it's like, but the other stuff has come up. We should change your plans here. And he's like, nope, the firm's happening, guys.
The firm, they're getting no reactions, but it's like, but I've got I want to do the firm. The firm's my big plan.
Look at all these guys that are super duper over TK that could do with like proper main event pushes and AEW world title shots. But the firm, you see,
I've got W. Morrissey's in my back pocket.
Yeah, which feels like that's the point we're at in TK. And I don't know whether this, because like we mentioned earlier, the cruxes, the genesis of McGillicuddy that people think is kind of like the downturn of AEW was the Ring of Honor purchase or Cody leaving or one of those two, right?
That time frame.
That
sort of time frame is that period of time. And I don't know whether because TK bought Ring of Honor and now had not just a lot more people, but a lot of more titles and things to worry about. The presentation of Ring of Honor and how he was going to push all these guys and how he was going to make Ring of Honor feel important. I don't know whether he's just stretched too thin so that he physically cannot spend time thinking about the other stories in AEW, which is why we get superficial segments like, we'll do a promo segment. What's a promo segment for? I don't know, promote the match. You know, that feels like to me, because he has so many things to think about now, and probably behind the scenes he's still trying to get Ring of Honor TV deal. That's probably taking time. You know, like, I don't know whether he literally just has too much on his plate that he can't put in the same level of creative input into these stories that he had before, because he's just too busy now. He has too much stuff happening and too many people and titles to try and promote that he now is just like, we'll do stories, whatever. Whereas before he could actually dedicate and be like, this is the direction of the story. We're going to have this beat, this story beat, this story beat, this story beat to get to this point. And he just can't do that anymore. Pure speculation on my part.
I was going to say, I don't know whether it's just that or... No, I'm just going to wait till this period is done and I can go back and do my thing that I wanted to do.
Maybe.
I mean, I hope it's that. I hope it's just like, okay, we're through the difficult time. Now we're just going to get back to it. And then it's good again. And I hope that's the case.
Clearly, his big story he's got is the contract war of 2024.
Yeah,
like the MJF thing. Like that is clearly. I think that is his next big thing. And we get through Full Gear, and he can start to focus on doing that story, and that's going to be the thing that's going to carry us for the next 12, 14 months. And that's grand, and that's great. It just meant that like the last couple of months have been, they've been there. Is it a bad TV show? No. I've seen way worse TV shows. I've seen way worse wrestling products. I've watched. I was there when TNA was real bad, and I still watch week to week, being like, "Oh man, this is awful. This is really, really bad." I've never had that with AEW. I've never tuned into an episode of Dynamite and left being like, "Woof, that was awful television. That was really bad. This segment sucked. This segment sucked. That makes sense. This and the other." I've done that with Raw. Done it with SmackDown. I've done it with Impact. I've done it with a bunch of stuff. I've done it with Ring of Honor. But I've never had that with Dynamite. But what I have had is an episode being like, "Yeah, it was okay. That was fine." And in some ways, I think that can be worse, because indifference is a worse emotion than anger or annoyance.
To a degree, I think. Yeah. I think that's right, because there's still good in the show.
Still is.
It's not that everything is bland or uninteresting, because there's still, at the very least, good wrestling.
And there's guys that are over.
There's people that are over, and people like the music, and people go like, "Hey, this person's here. That's fun." And you still get fun things, and you still have the odd moment of brilliance with an MJF segment or whatever. There's still stuff to hang on to that's still good. It's just not the caliber of what we had last year, and maybe that's just us expecting greatness all the time, which we can't have.
Can't have it all the time.
But I don't know.
I kind of want to agree with something that you said, because there is a...
I want to, but I won't.
Because I forget where this quote comes from, but they say that the opposite of love is not hatred, it's apathy. And it's where it's like, well, the opposite of loving this show so much like we have is not, "Oh, the show's terrible, rah." It's, this show's fine.
Yeah.
It's just not that interested, not super excited to watch it. And again, I don't necessarily think that is a worse fate for it than being like Impact levels of bad, being WCW Thunder levels of bad, being Raw levels of bad from like a year ago. I don't think that would be better than what we've got going here. I think that it's still the best wrestling show on TV every week. But again, I don't think it is also unreasonable from the standard that they have set to expect more out of this show.
I think there's also the point, Pete made this earlier, about AEW fans had the, I'm trying to think what the wording you used there. It's not like the faith in the company, it's the...
goodwill.
The goodwill, thank you very much. it was the goodwill that a lot of AEW fans had. So even when shows were, not great or they were okay, it was just like, right, yeah, but, last week's show was amazing. They're building to this thing over here. So I think we can, certainly give them some form of credit. At least we're going to get to this. And more often than not, they were repaid for that goodwill.
Absolutely.
But you're right. Like, I think they have chipped away at that goodwill. And I think the problem with that is that over on the other side of the wrestling war is that WWE has now got a new head honcho and has made a product that people now have the goodwill for. Because, I've got to be honest, guys, Raw's not great. It's better than what it has been. And that, I think, has made people be like, oh, Raw's an incredible show now. Like, Raw is the best show on a weekly show. And really, it's not. And I don't think SmackDown is either. And I don't think NXT is either. But we're on the goodwill portion. We're in the honeymoon period where he can do no wrong. If we put up a Raw podcast that has got a negative title, it's like, why do you hate this product? Why wouldn't you just let this be good? Why wouldn't you just say nice things about this show? There were loads of good things you could have said about this show because we're in the goodwill portion. And it's whether or not Triple H can keep hold of that goodwill and ride that for the next year, 18 months. And if Tony Khan can rebuild some of the goodwill that he has chipped away over the last, I can't say year because I think he still had it at full gear last year. And I think going into the new year and stuff, the Danielson and Adam Cole stuff, I think it really is up until Revolution maybe, or
I think it even lasts later than that because I think it's kind of really starts with the TNT title program as far as like what's actually playing out on TV. And then it was a fallout of certain things. And I don't think we started feeling that level of everything until about Double or Nothing.
Yeah.
Like when it was, oh, MJF's unhappy, there's something there. And then
They're
the
not showing up.
Wardlow
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
And then
Satnam Singh
happened. And all of a sudden people weren't happy that like Britt Baker won the Owen Hart Cup. And there was just, it started to compound itself after that. But Forbidden Door having a lousy build, ending Forbidden Door with a run-in to promote Blood and Guts, and then Blood and Guts not being the end of things. And again, it just kind of goes on and on from there. But I think if they had like nailed Double or Nothing, and I don't know this is speculation. I think this whole train goes off the tracks with CM Punk breaking his foot.
Yeah, in a way, because Punk's then just at home stewing.
Yep, he's at home stewing. He was going to go on a run. He could have wrestled Tanahashi, and he would have been over the moon with that.
Saving all of that animosity he had for All Out, for that post-media scrum. Like, and then that's really it, and the train falls completely off the tracks at that point. You're right. I think it just starts to dip, and then it's off completely up with Brawl Out. Yeah. And that's a real... Because that also, we talked about this, comes around at the same time as all the Malachi Black stuff, and then it's followed up by the Andrade stuff, and it's like, oh man, this is not a great place at the moment. This is a company that's losing its way. And then again, I talk about the rise of WWE because Triple H has taken over. What was the thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago? They changed their plans because Sammy was getting massively over. So we've gone into a different direction, which is what Tony wasn't doing. Yeah. Tony was sticking to his guns and doing this while Triple H is over here being like, well, we had this direction, but Sammy's massively over at the moment. So let's do more of that. And it's been the best thing on SmackDown. Again, I argue, the only good thing on SmackDown that isn't a Bray Wyatt promo.
Yeah. Or a Gunther match.
That's actually three things that are quite good on SmackDown. Gunther, Bray Wyatt, and the Bloodline.
Gunther doesn't have matches every week.
Doesn't have matches every week, but Imperium is still great. Whenever they do stuff, I'm like, I'm into this.
Yeah.
Because it's Gunther adjacent.
That is fair. Do you know what? It's only because Raw's got nothing.
Just take it out on SmackDown.
I just take it out on SmackDown as well, because I'm there just being like, why isn't Raw got a good story at the moment? It's the show I have to watch. The point is that they changed that thing there so that we, as the fans, get more of the thing that we like, and that is riding the wave of momentum. Sheamus has been on this huge crest of momentum off the back of Clash at the Castle, and they've just ridden that to be like, and now let's make him a top guy and he's going to go for the belt against Roman. Brilliant! That's wonderful, because that's rewarding fans for telling you what we like.
Exactly. We are the authority.
Finally! We are actually the authority now. Whereas I think with the AEW, we're like telling Tony the things that we likes, and he's like, "No, here's the ass, boys."
Well, the thing is, it seemed like Tony Khan was very good at that. Not necessarily in terms of adapting his plans or whatever, but fan service. And just being like, "Oh, you guys wanted this, so we'll get Warhorse in. Sure, you guys want that? Have a little match. Whatever. That's fine.
I feel like that's why he hired Danhausen.
Yeah.
Because Danhausen's popular on Twitter, so I was like, well, I'll bring in Danhausen.
Yeah.
And Danhausen got a great reaction for a few weeks, and it was like, nah, I don't get it, so it's not on TV for me anymore.
I think to a certain extent, he is still good at doing stuff like that because we'll get, again, like the Jun Akiyama match on Rampage this week. We just had Katsuyori Shibata wrestling on Rampage a couple weeks ago. So, like, he still is able to integrate things that will make the people who are just, like, scrolling through Twitter and, like, might watch the show, might not. They'll see a match graph and go, like, Bandito's wrestling Chris Jericho? I gotta watch that. Whatever the case may be, there's been plenty of examples of that. But they haven't exactly used a lot of that to further as many stories and everything and really benefit everything other than it just being a cool moment.
That's it. That's exactly it.
You know?
What a moment.
What a moment.
That was WWE's motto for so long.
We don't need storylines because we got moments.
We got moments.
And that's what Dynamite and Rampage has been for like the last few months. It's just been a handful of moments like that. Fan service. We had Shibata. Like, we had Shibata wrestling on like American TV.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's rad. That's amazing. But it's just like, it's also forgettable because like we're not really doing anything. There's no other things going on. So it's not like that's a nice little cherry on top of our lovely Sunday. They've just given us a cherry. And are just like, did you like the cherry? It's like, well,
it was tasty.
yeah, it was a tasty cherry. It's real good, but it's not a full dessert, is it?
It's not Sunday, is it?
Yeah.
I'm really going to ride this.
Where's the
This
Sunday?
metaphor that I've started.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's round out some thoughts here. Because for me, I'm still really excited for Full Gear. Because in spite of the booking, I think it's a damn good card. I think that I'm really excited for Moxley and MJF. I am really stoked for Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter because when Tony Storm came in, that was the match we were like, I know we've had it a couple of times, but now we're getting it on pay-per-views. Be like, brilliant. We're going to have Tony Storm versus Jamie Hayter. Thumbs up for me. Yes, please. I think that the Acclaimed and Swerve and Gloria are going to have an awesome match. I
Can't wait for that.
Cannot wait for it. I think Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy are going to murder each other in that cage, and I think it's going to be awesome.
TNT three-way.
TNT three-way. Absolutely, exactly. I get to watch Kenny Omega wrestle this weekend. That's always a good time for me. I always love doing that, so I'm excited for it. And Saraya's stepping back in the ring. That's great. This is amazing. But then what I'm actually looking forward to is what happens next. What does our first post-Full Gear look like when Tony Khan has got his favorite toys back? Where he lent them to a friend, and then his friend kind of lost them, and now his friends found them again and given them back, and he's like, cool, well, now I can do those toys storylines I wanted to do previously. And it's then going to be what that looks like from then through Revolution to be like, can he get this train back on the tracks? That is what I'm so curious about, because it has been missing something. And like you mentioned earlier, it's not just a one thing, it's a multitude of things. And I'm hoping to see the post-Full Gear, we find all those things and we get them back on the show.
Well, if history is anything to go by, normally post-pay-per-view AEW shows in particular are much more of like a hard reset than we do in some other, in like WWE, for example. A lot of the stories like continue through pay-per-views and stuff like that. So post-pay-per-view, it's not like, here's a hard reset, here's the next angle. Whereas in AEW, historically speaking, it is a lot more of like a reset. It's when like the Pinnacle were formed and it's the Firm. MJF's going to get a new faction after Full Gear, I'm sure. Just keep that train running.
It's him and Regal.
Yeah.
I'm putting it into the ether.
Yeah, probably. So I think it's not unreasonable to expect the first Dynamite after Full Gear to be a bit more of a reset, to be like, here's the directions, get excited. I'm very curious. I am excited for Full Gear. I don't think I'm as excited as I should be. When you list off the card, I'm like, objectively, that is a great card. But I'm not as excited for this card as I should be, based on the quality of matches that there's no doubt going to be. I should be like, I cannot wait for Full Gear. But I'm like, no, it should be really good. And that's it. I don't have that level of investment, despite some probably very good wrestling that's going to happen.
I think this will be AEW's first sub 100,000 buy show.
Ooh, that's a hell of a prediction.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't the first Full Gear just below? Maybe I'm imagining
maybe first in a while then.
Yeah.
Because like every other show they've had since then has been like 100, 120.
I think it's entirely
upwards.
possible that this could be
find out.
a poorly bought show, to say the least. My takeaway from all of this is, again, I think Tony is going to have a number of his toys back, and I think he might not have all of them back because there's still some pieces that have yet to come together. Because we haven't even spoken about this bit, that the Elite being taken off TV totally derailed what they were doing with the Elite and Hangman Page.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and that
That's
storyline, that was like one of the more emotional centerpieces of the entire show. So maybe if we can get Hangman Page back in the mix of things in the near future, fingers crossed, get well soon, Hangman, that will be another thing that hopefully you can add to the mix storyline-wise, that at the very least, Tony Khan has proven that he can seem to book that storyline long-term with little teases and little furtherings of plot and that sort of thing that I've been missing from this program. I'm hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping that just more and more people being added back into the mix can possibly... We're going to get House of Black back soon. That should be at least fun. Hopefully they'll wrestle a little bit more. I'm trying to remain hopeful because I want this show to be good. If they just have 3 straight weeks of great TV like it used to be, I'm like, well, they're back. I'm on board. Let's go all the way to Revolution. It's going to be an amazing time. This whole thing it's saved. We're back to the way things used to be. I'm ready for that to be the case. They just need to make it the case.
I wanted to be excited that they're coming to the UK.
Yeah.
I want to be excited they're going to be doing a show in London that I get to go to. Because at the moment, I'm excited that they're coming here, but I'm not like, oh, dude, I've got to get tickets first day of release. At the moment, I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll be going to that when it comes out.
But my first thought was, oh, we should probably do a watch party for that.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably end up doing a meetup for it because we'll go to the event.
Yeah, probably.
Just to clarify my claim. So the last time that AEW had a pay-per-view that was under 100,000 buys was Full Gear 2020. So Pandemic was the last time AEW had a show that did under 100,000 buys. I guess Revolution 2021 was 135. Then Double or Nothing 2021 115. So so it'll be a long time since they have done under 100,000 buys.
2 years.
And I think this may be the show.
Might be.
I think Punk not being on there, I think it's going to have a real effect.
Could well be.
Yeah.
We'll see. But anyway, we are going to be doing live reactions to Full Gear this coming Saturday. It's me and Tempest. I am fighting for that championship. So this is the last time you'll be watching a Content Club episode with that belt on his shoulder.
Nuh-uh. It's fine.
Nuh-uh.
And I feel like we people might thought we're down on this. I'm super stoked for Full Gear, and it's going to be a long show. I'm ready to strap myself in. I'm looking forward to it a whole heck of a lot.
The Elite is wrestling Death Triangle. It's going to be amazing.
Exactly. It's great. It's Omega and Pac. It's going to be amazing. It's even the Young Bucks and Lucha Bros.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And then we'll be doing a full review of that. It'll be Pete and Sat Iniangi reviewing the show on Sunday, which will be very, very fun. And then we'll be back with all the fallout for that the following week. Till then, I have been Luke Owen, DAD. That has been Chopper P. Quinnell. That has been your Jam That Champion and Quizzlemania Champion Tempest. And that has been the WrestleTalk Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Press the subscribe button and all that. Jam That Jam.